I'm not leaving the thing, but I'm gonna get out of in front of you. So welcome. A lot of you have been here before. Some of you haven't. This is Amplify. The space you're in is a co-working facility that we run with our partner NextSpace. If you guys need a place to work, please come here. Ask Sarah. She'll hook you up with a free day pass. You can check it out. Upstairs also is co-working. It's a really cool community. On the other side is Amplify, which is a accelerator, and so we invest in a lot of early stage companies. I'm Jeff. I'm one of the partners at Amplify. So I'm glad you're all here. Thank you for coming. Today, every Wednesday, we have these events. There are different topics, presentations, all different kinds of things. Today, we have Craig Howe is going to talk to us about social media, but he just let me know a little nugget of can I say what you just told me?
Sure.
Okay, so he's kind of nervous today. Normally he's like, no problem, I'll present to anyone, anywhere. But apparently he's got one of his clients from the NFL is here hidden in the audience. So, is it this guy that just walked in?
No,
oh, okay.
It's not.
You look like you have a jacket on, so I thought maybe it's not. So he's testing out this presentation here. So he's a little worried about how it's going to go. I'm sure it'll be awesome. But Craig's a great mentor for Amplify. A lot of what Amplify does is help our companies, and we have lots of people from the community mentor, and he's done a lot for our guys. So I'm excited to hear your story and what you can tell us, and I guess just take it away.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I don't know how many of you are involved with the Amplify program, but it's awesome to come in here and see a lot of these early stage companies. So I'm really thankful to Chris and Paul and Dana and everyone at Graycroft. It's an awesome organization. And what Jeff just said is actually really true. So this is really a mutually beneficial presentation for me because what I hope to give you is a little bit of knowledge on social media, but at the same time, this is kind of like a little bit of a rehearsal for me for a presentation I'm going to be doing at South by Southwest in a couple of weeks. So thank you all for being my guinea pigs. But I'm just going to start by kind of giving you the history of my life in about 3 minutes. So I grew up in Golden, Colorado, and for those of you who may have heard that name before, Golden, Colorado was the home of Coors beer. Honest to God, to this day, the smell of beer does remind me of my childhood and walking to school in the morning. I went to the University of Colorado. When I was a freshman, we won the national championship, which was awesome. Last year, we were voted the second worst team in all of NCAA college football, which is disgusting. So right after college, my senior year, I got an internship with the Colorado Rockies, where by day I was this super marketing intern that did whatever they wanted me to. And then at night I was a guest relations supervisor, which means I wore like a size 46 jacket, which was way too big for me. And if you had a beer spilled on you, or if a bat went flying into the stands and you were really unhappy, it was my job to give you a free hat or a free t-shirt, which would make you happy. So I did that for a while, and then I got this really cool job interview. So I packed up my stuff and I moved to San Francisco, and I went to work for EA Sports for 3.5 years. And that's back when Madden football looked like this. So long time ago. I know I'm getting old. That's just the way it goes. But the great thing about living in San Francisco in the mid-90s was it was and anyone that lived up there or was around there then, it was amazing. Everyone I knew was a millionaire. Administrative assistants I knew were paper millionaires. There were luxurious parties every night. It was incredible. And then at the turn of the century, 1999, 2000, the bubble burst and the place became a ghost town. So I packed up my stuff, I got on a plane, and I moved to Tokyo, which was an unbelievably crazy experience for me. And all of you have probably, if you've been to Tokyo, if you've heard about working in Tokyo, much of what you heard probably is true. This is me and one of my coworkers 5 nights a week. It was required that I would go out and drink with my coworkers, and sometimes on Sundays, because my boss liked to drink on Sundays. So I did that for 2 years, and also as a big sports fan and genuinely a true blood American, this wasn't really the same as going to watch football and baseball and the sports that I love. So I missed home a little too much, so I packed up my stuff and I got on a plane and I moved to LA and went to work for Universal, where I worked my way up to one of the heads of marketing in the game division. And I was that guy that got to work on the film games, right? And one of my last projects in the corporate world was called The Hulk, which was inexplicably directed by a very nice Buddhist Chinese man who's best known for the ice storm. So everyone in here knows how that turned out. So I quit my job and I started a social media agency back in 2002. hired some really cool digital people. By the way, if you Google cool digital people, this is the first image that comes up. Worked for some amazing clients over 8 years. I got to know some great people and do a lot of work. And sold the agency and went through an earnout. And any of you have heard that term. It just basically means exhaustion over a 4-year period. And I took a little well-deserved time off after that. Spent a lot of time with my wife and my kids. And so that's how I got to this point. And I really realized that there's 2 things that I'm deeply passionate about in my work life. One is I'm really into the whole startup scene because our agency eventually grew to about 75 people, LA, New York, Toronto, and London, a lot of big clients. But to this day, my favorite time was when we were 8 people in a crappy loft warehouse downtown LA, where every victory is like monumental and every loss is absolutely crushing. So I mentor and invest and advise for a lot of different accelerators across the country. And the other thing that I'm deeply passionate about is the world of sports. So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to work in various capacities with a lot of different sports leagues and some globally as well that aren't on this list. And because everyone always asks me this question, oh, what's your favorite team? So my favorite team is the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'll tell you just a really quick story about how aggro I am about the Philadelphia Eagles. When I lived in the Bay Area in 1998, the Eagles played the Raiders, and a lot of you in here may be Raiders fans or know what Raiders fans look like and act like. So I bought tickets, and I don't know if you noticed this, but I'm not a really big guy, right? So I bought tickets, and my tickets were front row in the black hole, which is where all the Mad Max-looking people sit at Raiders games. So I'm in the front row, and I got my Eagles jersey on, and end of the first, I didn't say anything till the end of the first half, and the team's walking on the field, and I can see the players, and I'm like, yeah, good job, and I'm clapping for everybody, and 2 Raiders fans came up, and one grabbed each of my legs, and they flipped me onto the field. And 2 giant bouncers came over, tackled me, they put me in those plastic handcuffs, and dragged me into the under bowels of Oakland Stadium, and they started berating me, and I'm like, I just got thrown on the field. They're like, why the hell are you wearing an Eagles jersey at a Raiders game? I'm like, pride, baby, and it's like, you're an idiot, and they kicked me out of the stadium. So anyway, that's my Eagles story. So what I really want to do now is just kind of give you guys some thoughts on how to get the most out of your social media efforts, and let me just give you the one underlying principle that I believe in social media above anything else, and that's that if anyone ever tells you that they're a social media expert, they're actually a giant asshole. There's no one in the world that's a social media expert. I mean, this space changes every day. There's new technologies, there's new user behaviors. There's no such thing as an expert. So what I'm telling you is really sort of an amalgamation of my experiences working with some really cool people in this space, and a lot of times specifically in the world of sports and otherwise. So let's just make that really clear right off the bat. So this will probably take 30, 40 minutes, but I want to jumpstart your brain in 30 minutes or less with 7 guiding principles to social media. And the first one, I know it's really hard to believe, and it's really hard to believe when you're a very successful sports franchise or a movie or a celebrity, but your fans love more than just you. And this stat comes from our friends over at Twitter, which is more than half of Twitter users follow 6 or more brands, right? They're not just paying attention to just what you're doing, they're watching what a lot of other people are doing. And we all know that the social media beach is getting a lot more crowded than it was years ago. But the good news from our friends at Facebook is that almost 80% of people read your news feeds. They engage with your content, and almost 20% will share that if they're enchanted by it. So I guess the question is, how do you do something that's going to resonate and stand out from all those other people that are using social media? One of my favorite brands in all social media is Oreo. How many of you here follow Oreo on Twitter? Any of you? That guy. Nice work. So Oreo is a cookie, and it's really hard to do much with a cookie. It's not as sexy as a sports franchise or a movie studio, but they've done a great job of tapping into pop culture. So they did this post for Twitter's 6th-year anniversary. They did this tweet for the start of Shark Week. They did this tweet for the start of Elvis Week. So as you can see, they're starting to get into being more than just a cookie to people. They're tapping into pop culture. Another brand that I love on Instagram is Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if you guys saw what they did for Halloween. A couple of people that manage their social media just doodled on a couple of cups to make Halloween decorations. And the next thing you know, they had an influx of thousands of consumers across the company or across the country doodling on Dunkin' Donuts cups. Again, this is a coffee company, right? What the hell do they have to do with Halloween? Well, that's the exact point, is in social media, one of the best things you can do is elevate your fan connection. Think of ways to make your social presence different and relevant than what people expect from you. So that's number one. Number two is you don't need to hit a home run every time, but you can't hit a home run if you don't swing. Nice little baseball analogy. This next slide is one of my favorite movies of all time. Full disclaimer, this quote is actually from Paul Rudd's character, but everyone in the world loves Ron Burgundy. 60% of the time, it works every time. And this to me is like the perfect quote that epitomizes social media. And I'll give you a couple examples. I was speaking at a conference in Stockholm a couple years ago, and I met Michael and Nicholas Heed, or Head. I don't remember how you say it. It's the founders of Rovio from Finland. You say it in the Finnish way, however you pronounce that. And I went up to Michael afterwards, and I said, "Man, you guys are so awesome." I said, "How did it feel to come out of nowhere and make Angry Birds?" And he's just shaking his head and looking at me, and I'm like, "Well, did I piss you off? I mean, did I offend you?" He goes, "Angry Birds was our 52nd game." He's like, "We've been making games for 9 years, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we had this massive hit." So, I mean, a lot of people, it's just like in the world of social media, they remember you for your biggest hits, but no one knows all the failures and all the climbing that you had to do to get there. So that's maybe your fun fact of the day. I hate really, I'm gonna not talk about any of the details on the slide because I hate case studies, but we were the social media agency of record for the NHL for 3.5 years when I worked at my own agency. And this is what happens a lot of times in the sports world and probably in the corporate world in general. The commissioner decided, along with the CEO, that social media needed to increase viewership ratings for the Winter Classic, which is their outdoor game, right? And a lot of people in this world think that you just push a social media button or you fire a magic bullet and all of a sudden everyone likes something and engages with content, right? We all know it doesn't work that way. So I got a brief from the head of digital, and he basically said, "All right, guys, we need to increase viewership ratings for the Winter Classic." And being an agency, we said yes without knowing how the fuck we were going to do it, but we said, okay, we'll figure it out. So we spent about 2 months of intense planning, and we came up with an idea. It was to be this was going to be the first concept that ever integrated Facebook into a live sports broadcast. So at the end of every period, we would give away prizes to people that were following the action on Facebook. Not a revolutionary idea, but it had never been done before in social media integrating with broadcast, right? So we did 2 months of intense planning and partnered with Twitter and Facebook and did all this ad buys and had our app partners all picked out and did all that work up front, right? We did our 60% of the work. And all of a sudden, is anyone in here a lawyer, or do they know a lawyer? My wife's a lawyer, so I know a lot about lawyer. You're a lawyer. So basically, NBC, NHL, and Facebook had to pull in their lawyers. And when lawyers get involved, things slow down, right? Sometimes they come to a screeching halt. So got a call from the head of digital saying, "Okay, guys, it's off. Maybe we'll do this for the All-Star game. Maybe we'll do it for the playoffs." And then, 2 days before Christmas, my phone rings, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" It's Perry Cooper, who's the head of digital. And I pick up the phone. He's like, "All right, we're back on. We have 10 days. Let's build everything and do this." Right? So luckily, we had done that 60% of planning work ahead of time, and we were able to, beg and plead and pay our staff a little extra money to cancel some of their Christmas vacations. We came in, we executed everything, and then we get to game day. And is anyone in here an engineer in physics or any of those smart functionalities? So it's pretty obvious that when it rains at an outdoor hockey game, that's not really a good thing at all. So it was raining in Pittsburgh that day, so they had to move the start of the game to 8 p.m. instead of 2 p.m. So instead of being up against 4 college football games, the hockey game was up against the tail end of 1. And miraculously, we had a 22% increase in TV viewership from the previous year. Now, as a social media person, we'll take all the credit in the world for being prepared and doing all the magic we could to make that work. But a lot of social media, a lot of being successful 100% of the time is a lot to do with luck and circumstance, right? So what you really have to do in order to have luck and circumstance is capitalize on your opportunities. So another story, a guy that used to work for me. Anyone in here know Buzz Media or work for Buzz Media? Okay. So Buzz Media manages the social media profiles for the Kardashians and Nick Cannon, and they run Celebra, so they're really into that whole part of the world that I don't really understand. But last year, Jessica Biel and Justin Timberlake were going to get married, right? They were engaged for a long period of time. And Eli, who used to work for me, went to his boss and said, "Guys, can we plan something here? Because when they do get married, we know that these guys drive a lot of buzz and a lot of traffic to our site. Can we develop an app or a campaign around them getting married?" And the head of content and the CMO are like, "No, we got too much shit to do. Let's not worry about that. But good idea. We'll figure it out later." So lo and behold, as most celebrities do, they went off to wherever that beautiful location and they got married. And all Buzz Media was able to do was put up one Facebook post, one tweet, and then write a small article. That alone accounted for 20% of referral traffic to their site for the entire day. So I guess the lesson there is, you have to capitalize on your opportunities, you have to plan, and you have to be ready to take advantage of luck that happens in social media. So, there's no magic bullet, there's no button that you can push. You have to be in position to succeed. The next one is embrace competition through technology. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start really light and then work up to things that are more complicated. This was awesome. I don't know if any of you guys saw this. This was a war of words between Old Spice and Taco Bell, and I'll just read it to you. So, at Old Spice, why is it that fire sauce isn't made with any real fire? Seems like false advertising. At Taco Bell, at Old Spice, is your deodorant made with really old spices? At Old Spice, at Taco Bell, depends. Do you consider volcanoes, tanks, and freedom to be spices? Awesome, right? This is a Procter & Gamble company and a Pepsi company that have nothing to do with each other. And a lot of times people forget that you can have a lot of fun in social media through friendly competition. Another example, Game of Thrones. Anyone in here Game of Thrones fan? I absolutely love that show, amazing. So I don't know if any of you saw this campaign last year, but basically the way that Game of Thrones works is there's all these different, what do you call them? Houses, thank you, competing to be the dominating house that rules the kingdom. So what Game of Thrones did is they basically said, okay, Facebook community and Twitter community, whoever uploads the most flags of the house that they want to be the ruling community as their profile picture, we will use that in our marketing materials for the next season. So they basically crowdsourced who they were going to feature in their social media channels, which is a really cool campaign and a great way to think about social media. This is an app that we created for the NHL. A lot of people are like, well, what are we going to do with Instagram, and what are we going to do with Pinterest, and what about Twitter? But no one thinks about how do you make those mediums fit together, right? Because they don't have to live independently of one another. So what we did at the NHL is we created a Twitter aggregator that lived in Facebook. And basically what this is it's very simple, right? Any tweets that reference a team or reference a player would be aggregated into a visual way so that the bigger the puck, the more buzz that you had as a team. So you could aggregate this head-to-head, teams versus teams, player versus players. Pretty simple, but neat application for fans, right? And we'll talk about how we utilize that later on in this presentation. And then the last thing, any of you that are at Amplify here know Squabbler. And this is the one place in the world where I really like to combine the two worlds that I love, because I'm going to tell you a quick story. Anyone in here know Buddy Media? Okay, a lot of you probably know Buddy Media, right? They sold to Salesforce for $800 million. So Buddy Media's first client was Starwood, and a good friend of mine runs platforms and tools at Starwood. And Buddy Media didn't charge Starwood a penny to be their client, because it was a beautiful symbiotic relationship where Starwood needed to have a better management system for their social media channels, and Buddy Media needed to figure out a better way to make their platform stronger. So I always encourage people that rather than always going out to work with the big companies and the big names that you've heard of, find smaller companies that will bend over backwards to be your partner and develop that anchor partnership. And without each other, those companies wouldn't have been as successful as they were in social media. So I guess the lesson there is harness fans' emotion. Give your fans a canvas for engagement. You can't have the same campaign running on social media for month after month after month. The shelf life for social media is weeks, not months, right? So keep things fresh, and you want to spark competition. Have fun. This is a fun medium. And then the part that I'll get to later that I personally love as a data geek is rank, measure, and gather data on everything. Always be looking at measuring your efforts so that you can continue to refine and be more and more successful. I talked about this earlier, because you build it doesn't mean they'll come. And as an agency, we did so many campaigns where the only budget we had was to create the social media app and maybe do a couple posts on Twitter and Facebook and maybe do something on Foursquare. A lot of times that doesn't work. You have to spend money to water and promote your ideas. And if I had like a world championship trophy in my hand right now, I would definitely hand it to Red Bull. I don't know, any of you guys seen what Red Bull does in social media? Bless you. Or anyone, follow Red Bull or know anyone at Red Bull, I definitely consider them to be the world champions of social engagement at scale. I mean, how the hell does a snowboarding movie become #1 on iTunes? Have any of you guys seen Art of Flight? Show of hands, anybody? Know the movie? It was #1 for almost 6 weeks, right? And the reason it was #1 is because Red Bull did an integrated digital marketing and social media campaign. They did iframe ads, HTML5 sites, site takeovers, pre-roll video, all the digital advertising that you would do. And then on the social media side, they did something awesome. They had an epic Facebook tab with 10 locked videos, and the only way these videos were unlocked was with things that would happen in the community in the real world. So in other words, the first video wasn't unlocked until they had 50 inches of snow at the first ski resort in North America. That's pretty awesome. The other videos were all, milestones based on behavior, like if we need to get this many likes or this many comments. And so they integrated that together to create at $9.99 a product that was #1 on iTunes for 6 weeks. That's pretty badass. And I bet everyone in the room you saw this, right? Or most of you heard of this. This was the social media event of the year. How the hell does having a man drop from space become the event of the year? And I don't know if any of you in here know Kevin Doohan or April that work at Red Bull, but they're very, very tight-lipped about their case studies. They don't really share any, but they did, say Dotchess Group. So this is information from the Dotchess Group who did a whole case study on it. And I asked April, I said, how long did you promote this? How far ahead of this did you have to get in order to make it successful? She goes, well, for us it was an eternity. It was 5 weeks, right? So what I said earlier about social media moving at rapid pace, 5 weeks is a lifetime in social media. Red Bull only promoted this thing heavily for a 5-week period. So when you're thinking about social media, it's not about, okay, maybe we should send somebody up in space. It's about, how do you water your great ideas? How are you taking your concepts and making sure that you're combining digital marketing and social marketing to make them successful? You can't just throw up a post or throw up an app and think that it's gonna take over the world. Number 5, whoever updates your social media channels is your online face of your franchise, right? A lot of you in here are probably football fans like me. Everyone knows that Peyton Manning's the face of the Broncos, RG3 is the face of the Redskins, right? So I'm gonna give you 3 examples of what often happens at the team level of who's the face of the franchise, right? The first one is the intern face of the franchise. So, I'm in my early 40s, I have 2 kids, I have a wife, I have a pretty busy schedule. The last thing that I have time to do is if I work for a team, would be to go to a game every night and tweet every 3 innings, right? And write a Facebook post at the end of the game. But interns can do that, right? These are young people just out of college. They're ready to go get them. They have a lot of time. So a lot of times this happens just by default. Like, oh, have the intern do it. Have the intern go to the game and do everything, right? So these guys become the face of your franchise. The second guy is who I call, or girl is who I call the and also person, right? This is my friend Julian Valentine. By the way, your other fun fact of the day, this is the only person I knew that grew up Amish. So he was Amish and now he's not. Now he works for the Rock. His official title is Associate Editor Magazine Newsletter and also Social Media Manager. So you'll see Promotions Manager and also Social Media Manager, right? And that happens all the time. So you get an and also. Someone just says, oh, this is a smart person, they know digital, just give them social media. But the truly enlightened form of social media management is really, if you looked at the Tom Brady of social media, and these are the guys and girls that I have so much admiration for. One of those is a guy named Brian Sarabian from the San Francisco Giants. I really think so highly of this guy. And when I was putting together this deck, I'm like, look, I can stand up here and try to say some really smart stuff about managing a social media community, but would you mind just giving me some tips to share with people when I present this? And being an awesome guy, he said yes. So these are Brian Sarabian's tips on being a great social media community manager. The first one is live your brand from multiple vantage points. So Brian's career story is he started out as a PR intern, and then he went and worked in ticket sales for a couple years, and then he went and worked in community relations for a couple years. And basically he said that all that experience was necessary for him to understand what the San Francisco Giants brand truly represents, right? If he would have just come in as a social media community manager or just been a PR guy, he never would have understand how all the different elements of business work. So when you think about how to be managing social media really well, think about knowing every part of your organization so you really understand the brand. The second thing is plan like crazy but know when to call an audible. So the Giants had a huge campaign that they spent a ton of money on called #OrangeOctober, right? And so when they got into playoffs, they wanted everyone in the world to tweet with that hashtag. They were tagging all their marketing materials with that hashtag. And then they got in a series with the St. Louis Cardinals where they were down 3-0, right? And all of a sudden, Barry Zito pitched that night, and Barry Zito's a pitcher for the Giants, and he had an amazing game, and they started to come back. So fans started using #RallyZito, right? because that's what they kind of wanted to rally around. So all of a sudden, they'd spent all this money and time on Orange October, but Rally Zito is what the fans wanted. So Brian could have probably said, no, everyone needs to go back. He didn't. He said, fuck it, let's roll with it. This is what the fans want. Let's embrace the movement. So the official hashtag then evolved to Rally Zito, which is what the fans wanted, which I thought was a cool story. And the last thing, I think everyone probably pictures a social media person that's just sitting in front of their computer screen all day and looking at Hootsuite and TweetDeck and like posting and taking Instagram photos all over the office. I said to Brian, why do you think you're so good at your job? And he said, you know why? He goes, because I'm out of the office all the time. He goes, I walk around the stadium at the beginning of the game, in the middle of the game, at the end of the game. I go to sports bars. I talk to Giants fans. I'm on the street. I see someone with a Giants hat. I ask them how they're feeling about the team. Because when I'm running a social media community, I want to make sure that I understand how the city feels and how the fans feel, not just how I feel sitting behind my desk all day looking at digital and social media profiles. So I thought that was pretty profound. So the lesson here is, if at all possible, have a franchise quarterback if you're going to do social media. Have someone that can plan your strategy and also lead your efforts, that really understands those core principles. Number 6 is, you're more than just a team in your community. And I would say this applies to a brand or a product company. We can talk about how that fits in. But going back to our Amish friend, Julian Valentine, working for the Rockies. The Rockies are, a small market team. They don't have a lot of buzz in social media. They don't get a lot of traction. And they had this rule ever since I worked there, which was God knows how long ago. Every Friday you wear purple. That's what you do when you work for the Rockies, right? So the executive team got together and said, you know what? The Broncos are playing the Ravens this weekend. We can't wear purple. That's the Ravens color. That's a Cardinal sin. Let's just have everyone wear orange. So Julian went around the office and just took pictures of everyone wearing orange. And the post that he did on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram was, this weekend, we're all united in orange. This is the middle of January. No one gives a shit about baseball in January. No one's even paying attention. This was their highest engaged post of the entire season, in season and out of season. And, basically, this is the Rockies showing that they're not just a baseball team, they're part of the fabric of their city, right? Another example of that is Man City, right? Manchester City Football Club. Manchester City for 44 years didn't win anything, and this was really their motto for a long time. City or shit, right? They didn't win anything, and then they got bought, like a lot of these teams in England right now, they got bought by a billionaire. These guys got bought by an Abu Dhabi billionaire. They invested in all these players, and magically it started getting good. So a good friend of mine, I put his face up there because he says that he looks like a grown-up Ron Weasley from Harry Potter, which is awesome. And he's a great guy, and if you ever want to know more about what he's done, I put his contact info up there. But he came up with this idea of #together as the slogan for the team, right? And the reason why is this is about the city of Manchester. It's not just about the team, and #together was done to embrace the fans. This is the first time that a Twitter hashtag had ever gone onto a pro sports stadium before. And again, going back to our friends at Red Bull, this was a 5.5-week campaign. They didn't do this all season. They didn't do it to say, hey, we're going to be great this year. When they had momentum, they wanted to get the city more invested. And another thing for anyone in here that likes to beta test or does anything with software, Richard started something called the Manchester City Football Club Geeks. And I thought this was a really awesome idea. What he did is he started a Twitter handle, and he would only follow people that would be the first people to download apps, the first people to retweet, the first people to comment, the first people to give feedback. And he then aggregated these people as the beta testers for anything that they did in social media. So he knows these are my most passionate fans and these are my most digital fans. And he put them all on one Twitter account where he could test everything ahead of time. So obviously I have a lot of respect for Richard. So what happens, so I've told you stories about 2 teams that won championships, right? What happens when you lose 58-0? Or what happens when the poor sweet little Seattle Mariners who set a record in futility with over 100 losses? What do you do then, right? So a lot of the work that I personally do at the team and at the league level is really setting a strategy for what I call social media post buckets, right? So you're gonna have ups and you're gonna have downs, and you can't just post all day about like who you might trade, or if your coach might have 100 wins this season, or what's gonna happen with the team. You have to post about things that are relevant to anyone that lives in your city that follows you. So team news, milestones, or history. A lot of teams do this really well, but if I was the Chicago Bears, anytime we got our ass kicked, I would show a sweet video clip of that 1985 breakdancing video that they did when they won the championship, right? Bring your fans up, make them happy, and support what's happening in your city. You know, it's the middle of the summer in June and July. No one's really thinking about football. Everyone in Chicago is thinking about the taste of Chicago. You're going there, even though you work for the Bears, right? Why aren't you posting about that? Why do you always have to talk about football? And then last but not least is anyone that uses social media runs a business, right? So we have to think about referrals, which I'll talk about next, and why that's so important. So the lesson here is develop a well-rounded social media strategy. You may work for the Chicago Cubs or the Kansas City Chiefs, or you may work for Squabbler here, but you guys are in LA, you're in Kansas City, you're in Minnesota. Be a part of your community, post about things that are relevant to where you live, and people will get to have an attachment with you on more of a personal level and sort of respect and like you more as a brand. And the last one is pay attention to what really matters. I talked about earlier me being a big data geek. So for me, I mean, a lot of people want to gorge themselves. Oh, how many likes can we get? How many fans can we get? How many comments can we get? How many, you know, Instagram photos can we get uploaded? And that's really cool and that's really great and that's a fun thing to look at. But what I really think about for my clients is, you know, what are you trying to sell? What are you trying to get people to do? In the case of the NFL, they want people to buy tickets, buy merchandise, and they want to appease their sponsors. And by the way, the coolest thing in the world is that the Dallas Cowboys have an official bacon sponsor. Just wanted to bring that out. So the first thing I do when I look at anyone that's doing social media, I don't look at their likes and comments. I actually look at their social media to site referrals. How are you doing driving referrals to your site? Or how are you doing getting referrals to your shop pages? Are you getting people to consume content? Are you getting people to spend money? I don't really care so much about your likes and comments. We can easily optimize that. This is where social media needs to go in order to be a really relevant vehicle in the digital world. And then, you know, going a little bit nerdy and a little bit deeper, and I don't want to lose you guys on this, but I just want to show you how I thought when I took a look at what just happened with the Ravens. So, Ravens won the Super Bowl, right? We all know that. And a long time before the Ravens won the Super Bowl, a product catalog comes out of what the Super Bowl gear might look like. So I saw this awesome shirt called Rings Don't Lie, which is pretty cool, right? And then I went on the Ravens page and they had 10 best quotes from the Super Bowl, right? And these quotes, to me, sounded a lot like the theme of that sweatshirt. So, you know, a little free advice to the Ravens or anyone else doing social media. I would have renamed this section the top 10 Rings Don't Lie quotes from the Super Bowl, and this link under here would have been a link to buy that sweatshirt. And you know, you guys know what you can do with Facebook now, right? You don't have to use like anymore. You can use other verbs, right? So a great verb in this instance would be Craig joined the Rings Don't Lie fan club on NFL.com with the link below to the product page. That could mean that I bought the product, or that could mean that I like the product. But I'm just trying to show you guys like the ecosystem of how to look at social media is much more powerful when you look at how it fits with your commerce than when you're just looking at standalone for likes and followers. Going back, I showed you that Twitter aggregator that we did for the NHL. I feel like I'm going to do a Marco Rubio right now. Do you use that silly thing? So going back to the Twitter visualizer, so that costs between about $100,000 and $125,000 that, you know, we did as an agency investing in the tech. So then the playoffs roll around, and lo and behold, we go to the Geico wanted to be a part of it. So we repackaged and resold that with some new bells and whistles and features to Geico for about $75,000. So awesome, right? We created some awesome tech for our social media fan base, and we just got one of our brand partners to pay for it. That's a win for everybody. The brand is happy because they're involved with a really engaging application for the social media community of the league and the team, right? It's a very symbiotic relationship. So, and brand investment in social media is increasing. The first year that we worked with the NHL, this is how much money that we could get from brands in social media. You know what they wanted? This is a true story. Our community manager that we had on the agency side came in one morning absolutely furious because one of the sales guys for the NHL had sold a post to Hungry Man Dinners that literally said, NHL games are better when you eat a Hungry Man frozen dinner. Literally, that's what they posted on Facebook. And you know, when you think about bastardizing your community and the horrible things that you can do in social media, that's probably horrible lesson number one. So year two, we said, okay guys, let's get ahead of this planning process. Let's sit down with all the league partners and start to plan some creative ideas and some promotions. So we generated $350,000 in revenue. I'm no longer working on that business, but the forecast when I left was $1 million. So So you're seeing real money being spent by brands in social media to give content that will fuel all the users to want to be more engaged. So, I mean, that's a beautiful cycle right there. So the lesson here is get beyond the like and the follow. If any of you guys are looking at social media, think about how it fits in with your broader digital strategy. How is it driving page views, site referrals, product views, things of that nature. And I think that you'll be, getting to the next level of enlightenment. I know that this is what I focus a lot of my attention on every day that I'm trying to figure out. So that's pretty much it. The sort of sun has set on our time together. And thank you so much. And I really appreciate everybody coming out for this and giving me a little test drive for when I'm going to do this in a couple weeks. So. There was a story a couple years ago where a 16-year-old became the youngest person to climb Everest, right? So our whole theme was we knew that was going to happen, so we mapped it out ahead of time. And our whole celebration that day was this person just climbed Everest, and we sent them Vaseline because their skin was probably dry, being at 28,000 feet. But it's more about thinking about your brand and your product and mapping out how you can look at what's going to happen in the world and make that resonate. Does that make sense to you? Tim?
How do you engage?
This better not be a hard question.
I'm always going to ask you questions. How do you engage with your users when they directly contact you through Twitter about a problem with your product?
Well, I think that's a great question because the problem with Twitter is a lot of times it does become a 1-800 line and it's replaced a 1-800 line. And the way that I've always seen that a lot of people end up, social media managers become 1-800 Twitter line managers, right? Where all day you're responding to comments and you're responding to negative thoughts. I mean, my whole philosophy towards that is try to deal with that person one-on-one and as quickly as possible so that you can be proactive in what you're doing on social media and not reactive. Because the minute you get sucked down that reactive hole, you're not really doing anything to further your social media presence. You're basically becoming a customer service line, and that's not the way you want to be. Not that it's that easy. I mean, of course, there's a challenge to it, but I hope that answers your question. And I'm here for a while if anyone wants to say hi.
Cool. All right, well, let's give Greg a round of applause.
Thank you.